one time. Let's start over on YouTube one time. Yes, we are on to Mindful Life number 36. Welcome to Mindful Life 36. Wow, it's the 10th of February. I feel like I say wow about the date every day. Like every day, it's just one more added to every day, but somehow it seems to still surprise you some way or the other. Always trying to keep our black man down. Of course, yes, of course. It's a fight down constantly. But here I am. And the topic of the day that we're going to talk about is the pension plan. As I said, the pension plan seems like it's struggling a bit. The National Insurance Board is struggling to see where they are going to get the rest of their financing from. Okay, Finance Ministry, NIB, in talks to increase retirement age to 65. Yes, to 65. So for some who may have been looking out for that pension coming soon, you may have to look out for a little while longer because the pension age is being looked at to be replaced at 75. All right. Finance Ministry, NIB in talks. The Ministry of Finance and the National Insurance, sorry, not 75, 65. My apologies, not 75. That's a lot scarier. The Ministry of Finance and National Insurance Board are discussing whether or not to increase the retirement age from 60 to 65. Now, bear in mind, this is not speaking about general pension. This is not speaking about general old age pension that you qualify for at 65, I believe, anyway. No, this is speaking about specific the NIB, the NIS pension. On Wednesday, during a Parliament Public Accounts Committee's inquiry into the audited financial statements of the NIB for the financial years 2014 to 2020, the ministry's acting permanent secretary Jennifer Lutchman said the ministry is considering making the change. At this point, what is engaging our attention is moving the retirement age from 60 to 65, she said. We are currently engaging in different scenarios, looking at the current economic situation and looking to determine what kind of solutions would be palatable. Lutchman said the ministry cannot yet say when the implementation would take place, as the minister, Colin Imbert, would have only recently reviewed some of the ideas being put forward by the National Insurance Board. The increase in the retirement age is one of the solutions NIB has suggested to address the issue of the declining number of insurance contributors. You see, the NIB executive director outlined this. Over the last 2 years, as of 2020, the contribution and investment income combined were insufficient to support benefit expenditure and administrative expenditure, she said. We had to use not only investment income, but cash and cash equivalents to support the deficits. So basically, the general idea is this. How the NIB works, how the National Insurance Board works, is they collect contributions. We know that. They collect some contributions, and then they, from those contributions, would invest in various things that would make money, and then from the investments, they would gain back some money. Then also from the additional contributions, they would gain money, and from that, they would pay out to their pension plan and to the other benefits. But what they are noticing now is that, unfortunately, the amount that they have to pay out, the expenditure of this National Insurance Fund, is far exceeding the amount that they are taking in. The amount by investment, the amount by contributions Either way, it is exceeding it. She said reform is urgently required and suggested 3 major changes. The first, she said, is the gradual increase of the retirement age. Now, I am not quite sure what that even means. The gradual increase of the retirement age. Gradual as in how quick? Because anything anything faster than increasing the age by 1 year every year is not going to make any difference. If you were 59 and they say, okay, well, this year we increased the age to 61. So you turn 60 and the retirement age changed to 61. And then the next year they say, okay, we're changing it to 62. So when you change to 61, they change it to 60. And that's just going to be torturous. It's best you just pull off the bandage quick if that's what you're going to do. I am not exactly sure when they say incrementally, gradually increase the retirement age. What exactly do they mean gradually? Good night, Ria. I hope you found your Valentine. You're running out of time. There are only 4 days left. And yes, so that's the first option. The first option is she says they could gradually increase the retirement age. That's one option. Good night, Mario. The second option is the gradual adjustment of the contribution rate. Currently, the contribution rate is at 13.2%. So any of you who actually look at your deductions in your salary, would notice how much is deducted for NIS. Currently, the rate is 13.2%, and they're proposing to increase that rate. So their Susu finally going to shut down. That's a good way to put it. Too sweet to be forgotten. That's a good way to put it. But the unfortunate thing is, it's not their Susu. It's all of our Susu, because I put money in that Susu. You know how when DSS crashed, you heard so many people talking about they put money in that Susu. So they have a vested interest in seeing how it went. Well, I have a vested interest in seeing how this national insurance Susu is going to run. Unfortunately for me, it seems like surely by the time I reach there, it might be all done. It looks kind of bleak. So the second option is to raise the rate from 13.2% to 16%. And the third option that they propose is that the minimum pension be frozen until it becomes relevant to change it. Sometimes the technical language that they use to use their word seems irrelevant. What do you mean till it becomes relevant to change it? When is it not relevant to get some more money? Answer me this. When is it not relevant to get more money? So I am not sure when would be that relevant time, but yeah, that's the 3 options they proposed are raising the pension age, raising the contributory percentage out of your salary, and freezing the pension amount, making sure that it does not increase anymore. She said the National Insurance Board has been meeting with the ministry and other key stakeholders to discuss all of that. NIB Chief Operations Officer of the Business Services side, Fiad Khan, said the aging population is not only a reality for TT, but other countries around the world. He said the last actuary review indicated there are 3.2 contributors supporting each pensioner. That number is projected to decline to 1 to 1 over the next 50 years. That is in the absence of reform, which is urgently needed. That's the problem. That's one of the main problems there. Okay, there's mishandling, there's corruption, etc., etc., etc. That's understood. But part of it also is the fact of an aging population. And this is one of the negative trade-offs that we find. This is one of the negative trade-offs that we regularly find. Mario asked, does anyone here have a contact in NIB? Trying to talk to the front desk people is a waste. I don't know, sir. Jeez, Shiny Dogla in the chat again. All right. So yes, the aging population is one of the main problems. So what we are seeing, and this is one of the negative trade-offs with just getting wealthier, with your country developing more, this is just one of the negative trade-offs, that you are forced to face. You see, as people make more money, they have less children. As people get more educated, they wait longer to have those less children. So as you get more money and educate your population more and more, people tend to have less and less children, fewer and fewer children, later and later in their lives. Weird question. Do people who don't contribute, this is being asked by Too Sweet to Be Forgotten, do people who don't contribute still get either type of pension, entrepreneurs, homemakers, etc., etc.? No. You can get your standard government pension, which really and truly is a government grant, but you cannot get a contributory pension if you didn't contribute. Now, here's the thing. If you're an entrepreneur, if you are a homemaker, you can go and choose to contribute to NIS. You can do that of your own volition. You go sign up, etc., and you make your contribution. So you are free to do that. It's just that it wouldn't be automatically done for you. All right. Yeah. So as the populations get richer and more educated, people have less and less children. And as people have less and less children, the same people get old, but their children aren't that many to keep in that working group. You see, what's happening isn't that your contributions when you were at the pension age is what you are using now. No. Your contributions for a pensioner who is in their 60s now, your contributions when you were in your 20s, that's been used for the pensioners when you were that age. Currently, who is supporting you are the current contributors. And if there are fewer young people to a larger amount of older people, you're going to end up in problems. And that's part of what they were saying here. Currently, the number of people, the number of contributors supporting the number of beneficiaries, the number of pensioners, is 3.2 to 1. So for every one pensioner or beneficiary in the NIB system, there are 3.2 people contributing to the system to support that person. But worse than that, the forecast for 50 years in the future is that to every pensioner, one pensioner, there's going to be one contributor supporting them. So if you're 20, in the next 50 years when you are 70, because of the aging population that we live with now, you are going to have only one contributor. You're going to be trying to get all the contributions necessary to support you at that pension age from one contributor. That's problems. Good night, Central Chow Master. Which last statement was incorrect, Mikhail Sergey? Which last statement? I don't think you can do that anymore. You don't think you can do what? Go sign up for NIS? You can't go make your own contributions anymore? Because I know of sole traders who go do that same thing. You mean pay more? So a large amount of young people will have to pay more to keep the pensioners afloat. That's what's going to happen. They're going to have to pay more. So we need to make more children. Well, the richest man in the world, the wealthiest man in the world, Mr. Elon Musk, that was something that he was pointing out. He said that's his view, that people need to be making more children out there. And it's according to what you want. It's according to how you see life and what you want out of life. But if that's the kind of society you're looking for, a society that can actually manage to take care of their older folk, their pensioners like that, well, maybe. User 2USX9IX, Mr. Wow. That's a lot of letters. How am I supposed to say that quickly? User. So does crime have an impact on NIS? Well, I guess crime would have an impact on every single thing. sole traders cannot pay for themselves as well. That is incorrect. I know that to be incorrect because I personally know of some sole traders who are currently paying for themselves. So I do not know what you're talking about. So I'm not sure how that would be like that. Trisha Constantine 6, why do higher bracket contributors in essence pay more into the plan but get the same benefit as someone who paid less? Well, it's a kind of socialized plan. That's the nature of a socialized plan. The socialized plan, and it is in a sense coming from a Marxist principle, from him according to his ability to him according to his need. It's a socialized kind of structure where if you make more, you put in more, although you may not necessarily be taking out more in the long run. And part of the assumption in that is that nearly anything you make within this society, as it will, comes from the movements within this society. So it makes sense that you pay into the society as much as you take out. Yes, he did, Spectral. Right, but maybe we shouldn't have much to worry because it wasn't that long ago. Just last year, I remember our finance minister was informing us NIB has 22 years of funding left. Opposition pushing fantasy. This article was only from June 18th of last year. Finance Minister Colm Imbert has slammed the UNC for what he described as fantasy being promoted regarding the status of the National Insurance Board. Imbert was asked about the firm measures being taken to save the NIB from impending insolvency. And Imbert back then had a problem with the term impending. He did not like that term impending. He found that it was misleading, and he said last year that the NIB has enough collateral to supply for 22 years, even if nothing is done. So, this is from the finance minister last year. I didn't hear if he changed his tune this year, and they are known for changing their tunes, and I will not be surprised if the tune has indeed changed. But last year he was saying that 22 years, even if nothing is done, 22 years we are safe. We are safe. But there are some problems with it because there was a report into what was going on with the funds, and the report revealed some of the problems with it. If you look at the numbers, if you look just at the raw numbers that were coming out there, you would see part of the problems with the funds. Hold me tight. Wow. I can't even read your name. Hold me tight asks, Nathan, what's the percentage of citizens working for minimum wage? I do not know. I have no idea. Interesting when you're saying that somebody probably touched the NIB funds. I remember one of the last government, they actually had that as part of their plan. That if we run out of money for this, we could just dip into the NIB. That's insane. They left gratefully, but who knows? There was an audit done, and it was found that the funds in the NIB they aren't showing to be in such a favorable state. The table accompanying The table accompanying this commentary indicates the following about the 6 years between the 2015 and 2020 financial reports of the NIB. So this is giving the breakdown of exactly what happened between 2015 and 2020. So the contribution income increased by 9.95% from 4.2 billion in 2015 to 4.6 billion. So between 2015 and 2020, the contributions increased. But the benefit expenditure, on the other hand, increased by 26.92%. So the contributions increased by 4 by 9.9%. Let's round that off to 10%. So contributions increased by 10%. But the amount of benefits being sent out, the benefit expenditure, increased by 26%. Let's call that 27 because it's 26.9. So a 10% increase in contributions that is supposed to balance off with a 27% increase in benefit expenditure. What's the update with AV Drilling and their new contract? I don't know what's the update with that. I don't have any new updates with that. As far as I know, they basically won their case in court and it went back into the privacy of private business. Number 3 in all of this, the number of contributors to the NIB fell from 21.80% to, which was 404,000, to 500. Wow, this is just phrased very weird. So it fell from 516,926 contributors, and then it fell to 404,197 contributors. So they had a 21% fall. This is in the number of contributors here. So the number of contributors fell. The amount of the contribution income increased a small amount, and then the benefit expenditure increased greatly. That's the main reason why the NIB is now in so much trouble. In short, this means that the NIB's benefit payments are increasing at a much faster pace than its contribution income, as the pool of contributors is becoming smaller and smaller. So not only is it a problem now, but the problem is being exacerbated. So the problem is getting worse and worse with each passing year. So and here's part of the problem too. With each passing year, more older people become pensioners. With each passing year, generally speaking, older people live longer. So there may have once been a time where someone got pension at 60 and, well, healthcare wasn't all that. So maybe you have 15 years maximum getting pension. Probably more realistically, you had 8 years getting that pension. So by 68, you're already kicking down the bucket and going to see the maker and see what he's up to. But now, as technology improves, you have people having longer lifespans. So if now you have someone retiring at 60, but they're living comfortably till 98, that's a lot of years. 60 to 98 is 38 years. That is a lot of years. And to have someone living 38 years off of benefits where they aren't working is a difficult thing. And the system was not really engineered as such. The system was engineered for when there were fewer old people and they lived for a shorter time, and there were much more young people, and that amount of young people would have easily supplied the need of the elderly. But what is happening now? What might eventually end up happening is you could end up, you see, this is what reality is, and this is what some people don't understand. Within a civilization, within a society, you could feel like, yes, we have a right to get pension. The government cannot stop pension. The government cannot stop us from getting any pension. Young people dying out fast, relatively fast. It's not actually that fast in the grand scheme of things. It's just that not that many are being born in the first place. But yes, you could say that you have a right to get pension, but really and truly, pension is a protection scheme built up by our civilization, by the advancement of our society. In reality, if you were just put into the jungle there and you had to survive for yourself, what was actually pension is you would have needed to make enough children so that by the time you are old, your children would be working so they can take care of you. That's the realistic pension. That's the pension in the jungle. That's the pension in the wild. That's the pension if your society isn't built up enough to supply that. So if now we end up stripping away the ability of our society to provide for the older people. And then we are pushing a society where less and less people have children. You see, sometimes, some of us in the modern generation downplay some of the older people that talk about children and having children and the importance, and we talk about them like it's just all nonsense they're talking about. And okay, I understand you don't like the judgment too much, but there's a realistic side. When you reach 75 and you have no one to look after you, what then? And this event, what this actually does, and that's what happens when you move away from family. You end up inevitably leaning on the state more. If you do not have that family to take care of you as you get older, well, you have to depend on the state to do it. So as you have people having less and less offspring, as you have people interacting in that familial manner less and less, then you have more people leaning more into the state to supply their every need. All right. Wow, J. Chris. Now, I'm not saying to go out there and try and populate the earth all on your own. That's not what I am saying by any means. I'm just speaking about the facts of the situation. I'm not even saying to go and have children. Maybe you don't want to, and maybe that might be better for the world, because probably you may be a poor parent. Who knows? I don't. But I think it's not something that is as flippant as especially many in the younger generation like to make it seem. And there's actually a very fierce anti-natalist movement out right now. Every other day, there's an article encouraging young people not to have children for environmental reasons, for health reasons, for some other reason. And I think personally, this is a bit conspiratorial, yes, I agree, but I think some of that has to do with some state actors enjoying the fact that the society leans on the state more. More power to the state. More power to the state. Yeah. So this was an article over from the Trinidad Express, the Trinidad Business Express from June 30th last year. And they had some suggestions on how they could possibly gain back some of that money. Here are some proposals to get NIB out of the hole it seems to be in. Monetize subsidiaries. In its 2020 annual report, NIB lists 3 subsidiaries. So remember I said NIB invests, and then it's supposed to get back money based on those investments, and then it could get more money to pay out more contributions, more benefits. So part of NIB investments would be some of these subsidiaries that they own: NIPDEC, Home Mortgage Bank, and TNT Mortgage Finance. NIB owns 100% of HMB, Home Mortgage Bank, and 51% of Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Finance. The government corporation sold, the state owns the remaining 49%. The National Insurance Board could revisit the proposal first made in 2012 to merge the Home Mortgage Bank and the TTMF and create one body, and then possibly by creating that one body, they could then put that one body up for an IPO, an initial public offering. So basically sell shares in this one body, because they would own a large amount of the shares in this, and if you put it on the open market, you would surely be able to raise some funds by this. So this is one of their proposals to raise some funds. You monetize your subsidiaries. Now, here's the thing. They may be able to raise funds like this, and this may very well be part of what the Minister of Finance was speaking about when he said that the NIB has assets, has the ability to pump resources in for the next 22 years because of things like this, because of options like this. But the problem with options like this, it's a plaster over a festering sore that is not going to go away, and it's just going to get worse after this new money runs out, because the problem keeps getting worse. You cannot solve the problem by just getting more money into the system, because that's not just the only problem with it. NIB whole board and operations needs to be fired and looked into. I will not doubt that. I will not doubt there's a lot of corruption there. But the thing is, there's an intractable problem that we cannot look away from, that we cannot move away from, that does not just have to do with corruption. If you look at most countries in the world, especially the more developed countries, this is a problem that many of them are facing. Maybe the ability to move that retirement age might really end up being one of the most important things. And here's why I think. Part of the reason why we are ending up in this kind of problem in the first place is our aging population and the technology, etc., that makes life more fulfilling and stretches out longer. So by raising that age, you see, back in the day, it made sense you had to retire at a certain age when 90% of all the work you'd be doing was manual and laborious. You cannot be looking at a 60-year-old person and expecting them to do the same laborious work that a 20-year-old would do. But now we are moving much more into a digital marketplace, even a virtual marketplace. And at 60, you could be just as proficient as a 30-year-old at digital work. So maybe that extending the retirement age to a little older might make sense. And might I add, some people may be, especially some of you millennials may need to look into private investment for your pension funds. Invest in some private pension funds, because NIB looking a little sketchy. But here's the thing. That still has its problems, because it's a lot of the times those pension funds that are invested into some of the massive that is put into some of the massive banks in the world, that they use to turn around and mash up some of the markets. And that's what caused some of the 2008 crashes in the first place. They use granny and grandpa's pension funds to do their miscreant deeds and crash the market, and then took the granny and grandpa's taxes from the government to bail themselves out. It could seem sometimes like you're trapped regardless of what direction you go into. Some people are asking about buying shares in MindFULL there. If you are interested in that, by all means, MindFULL shares are for sale. Inbox. I'm dead serious. If you want some shares in MindFULL Live, by all means, contact me. We'd have a discussion on how these shares shall be sold. But the problem, as I said, what's the IPO? When is it going to be? Yet to be announced. It's to be announced. I think we'd have a private IPO. Not one for any and every member of the public. A private IPO. How is the profit divided? We divide all the profit. We can divide all the profit that currently comes in. We could have a division of the profit based upon the current profit scheme of MindFULL Live. The current profit scheme of MindFULL Live, we will split all that profit evenly among all the investors, and we will leave it at whatever number the split is right now. We would leave it at that number as it goes forward into the future. I'm talking about MindFULL Live with that private IPO NKZ Farms. Yes, I know. An initial public offering that is private. Yes, I know. The irony of it. So yes, one of their suggestions for making money for the NIB was to monetize their subsidiaries. The other option they had was monetize major shareholdings. The NIB is the third largest shareholder in Republic Financial Holdings Limited, after the National Investment Fund and the Clico Investment Fund. NIB owns 29,944,942 shares that are worth at $135 a share, $4 billion. The NIB is also the largest single shareholder in Massey Holdings Limited, with 19,800,000, right, a lot of shares worth 1.58 billion as of, that was last year. So NIB is a major shareholder in Republic Bank, Republic Financial Holdings Limited. And by the way, Republic Financial Holdings recently recently put up some nearly record, well, not record, but impressive profits during the pandemic. And they're also a major shareholder, in fact, the largest single shareholder in Massey Holdings. So this is where your investment funds are going into. It may be curious to see how some of those decisions as to where they invest may be taken in the first place, because investing in companies could be a sketchy business. The NIB, if the NIB were to offer its shareholdings in these two blue chip companies for sale on the TNT Stock Exchange or in the Jamaica Stock Exchange, the proceeds from the sale of shares would raise 5.6 billion that could then be redeployed into other local or regional stocks. Again, this brings out liquidity, but I'm not sure how that solves it. The suggestion here is they sell that and then they would be able to reinvest into local stocks. But are we sure that any local stocks would be more profitable than Republic Financial Holdings Limited or Massey? And then the final suggestion that this person over at Business Express had was enroll Venezuelans. The institution's 2019 annual report states the NIB advocates for social insurance coverage for all categories of workers irrespective of their immigration status, consistent with International Labour Organization Convention ratified by Trinidad and Tobago. Well, they may want to, the reason they're suggesting liquidating some things here is because the NIB is running out of money to pay its benefits. Good night, unknown boy. Yes, the last suggestion there was rope the Venezuelans in. So you pull in the Venezuelans and they start dropping in some NIB contributions, and hopefully that increased NIB contribution. And here's the thing. But this, to me, this kind of sounds a bit exploitative. There's a kind of exploitative side to this. If they have so many investments in such profitable companies, they should be able to pay people. You see, the problem isn't just the investment, it's ratios. The problem is the ratios. They have investments in profitable companies, but they have an increasing amount of pensioners that they need to pay out, and they need to get money, and they need to get a large amount of money and an ever increasing amount of money there. What is NIB doing with their dividends from Massey and Republic Bank? That's what they're doing. In the initial story I read, well, you may not have been here for the initial story, they outlined how the amount that they're paying out in benefits is quickly outstripping the amount that they're gaining in contributions and from their investments. Over the last 2 years, as of 2020, the contribution and investment income combined were insufficient to support benefit expenditure and administrative expenditure. Exactly. It's just kicking the can down the road if they're doing that. But yes, that's what they said. Even with their investments and with the contributions, it still is not enough. It just is not enough. There are too many pensioners as compared to the amount they're making in their investment. There are too many benefits to be paid for the amount they're pulling in. That's just the facts as the way they're putting it. But yes, one of the suggestions that this writer made was to enroll the Venezuelans. I find there's an exploitative angle to that, where it could seem, because no Venezuelans would be qualifying for pension, but some of their NIS and NIB contributions may be going to some of our pensioners. What do you think about that? Do you think that you would be okay with that kind of scheme? We bring in some of the Venezuelans into the role. Kyle Edgehill asks, why are our ministers' salaries so big? There are multiple reasons. Part of the reason is to make it competitive. They say, they make it competitive. Part of the reason they pay some of these people higher salaries, they say, is to decrease the motivation for theft. I don't believe that a bit. Because first off, I don't believe that poverty is the main driving force of theft. I just don't believe that. And secondly, I think by now it could be clearly seen that as quoted by world-renowned philosopher Lil Wayne Wheezy F, and the F stands for any number of things he chooses at a given moment. Enough money ain't enough money. There's nothing such as enough money. So paying them more, I don't think that actually decreases the chances of them taking bribes, etc. Elcron says bringing in the Venezuelans who can't benefit is defrauding the Venezuelans. But the thing is, they would actually be able to get some amount of benefit. They won't get all, but they would get some amount of benefit because if they are injured, they would have that insurance benefit. If they are injured on the job, if it's a woman, she would get the NIS. They get something usually around if they get pregnant, you could get paid leave, etc., etc. So you'd get some amount of the benefits. You just won't get the pension benefits. Yo, sir, you really need to ease up on those late bears, man. You really need to. And then the only thing that they may not be benefiting from may be the pension. They may not get the pension, but they may be able to benefit from the other alternative benefits inside of the scheme. All right. And speaking of the Venezuelans, the furor is still going on. Now, I have seen so many news articles repeating this story over and over and over and over. I find some of it, the news seems to be making more news out of this story than there even is. There maybe were 3 stories written on 2 paragraphs of information, but it's one of those stories that pulls international interests and it could create a lot more clicks. So yeah, they're really honing in on this story, and our opposition leader honed in on this story too, and now she's receiving the backlash for it. In my opinion, rightfully so. Shameless Kamala. It was an accident. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has said in condemning the opposition's leader's statement that the death of the baby at the hands of the Coast Guard was murder. Rowley accused KPB of having no concern for the security of the country and its borders. In a statement which expressed disgust and amazement at the opposition leader and former Prime Minister, denouncing the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, whose primary responsibility is securing the country's maritime borders, and accusing the Coast Guard of murder, Rowley said the opposition leader has limboed to a new, expected, disgusting low. Mimicking the frequently expressed opposition's chants, close the border porous, Venezuelan illegal migrants overrunning Trinidad, we have 80,000 here, the Prime Minister said. All these statements have been the platform mantras of the opposition leader, and then this has happened. It was an accident, he continued saying. He reiterated that numerous times. And then, when you consider that if she were to be the Prime Minister of this country, she would be the head of the National Security Council, on which sits the Coast Guard. How would she be able to relate honestly with them if she has said things like this? This is similar to me. To me, I think this statement is magnitudes worse, but this is in a similar line to me as in when she said that Trinidad isn't the ATM of the Caribbean. How are you to say these things to people that you are supposed to have a professional relationship with? It paints a bad picture for the entire country. And she accused the Coast Guard of something specific. Murder has a definition. Murder has a meaning. To accuse the Coast Guard of murder is to already see that they are guilty of something. You could have preached your bleeding heart diatribe. You could have said all the important things that made it clear that you care so much about this, without making it seem like you are accusing the Coast Guard of something in the public without the evidence to back that up. I found that so irresponsible. Extremely irresponsible. It's so unfortunate to me. The UNC has put themselves in such an unfortunate place. If any of you in the chat are in the UNC, I regularly plead with you for this. The UNC has put themselves in such an unfortunate position where they have made their leader nearly invincible internally, while she is toxic poison externally. So anytime you do internal elections, no one can move her. Anytime you do external elections, no one wants to vote for her. This doesn't endear you to the general public. It doesn't bring your view up more. It just does not. But she had a counter to say even on this. Opposition leader, not a one-off incident. So basically, the opposition leader has doubled down on this nonsense statement. Well, let me not call it a nonsense statement yet. Let's see if there is value in her statement. So she has doubled down. Opposition leader Kamala Persad-Bissessar yesterday slammed Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley for saying the killing of Venezuelan baby was an accident in a media release titled Rowley's Gulf of Shame. She said the tragic killing of the Venezuelan infant by the Coast Guard is the culmination of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley's repeated failure to address the massive humanitarian crisis unfolding in Venezuela and institute proper policies with regards to migrants and border security. So, how exactly is the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago supposed to address the massive humanitarian crisis unfolding in Venezuela? How does that happen? How does that happen? Yes, Elkram, I know. Elk Room, I suppose that may be. Yes, I know she is requesting staying in the country, which is very interesting. How does the Prime Minister of Trinidad address the massive humanitarian problems going on over in Venezuela? What do you expect Dr. Rowley to do? Is he to go over there and tell Maduro, listen, the people really want you to relinquish power and hold an honest and fair elections. You better do it or else we are sending in the Titi regiment to do. No, that's not what we can do. We cannot do that. What do you want? What do you want the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago to do to solve the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela? Because that's what she said. Those are words quoted from her. Persad-Bissessar said since 2018 she has been urging the government to address the humanitarian disaster unfolding with regard to Venezuelan migrants illegally entering Trinidad and Tobago. The Rowley-led government not only refused to seriously address this grave issue, they flat out denied it was occurring. She said, adding that the shooting death of the baby warrants a comprehensive investigation. Oh, you're now saying that? The Rowley, she also said, we know that she'd want them fired. Persad-Bissessar stated now that there's the specter of international condemnation. Rowley is scrambling for cover by desperately attempting to suggest this tragedy is a one-off accident. But she said it is not a one-off accident. So let's see what makes this not be a one-off, because as far as I can remember, our Coast Guard aren't notorious for going out there and shooting people. Over on YouTube, we have Too Sweet to Be Forgotten is over there too. Weird part of that Venny thing is that they already get things quicker than Trini's. Next thing, they get first preference because they are foreigners. We kinda tend not. I guess this was back with the NIB business to put Trini's first in none of our processes. We need to look into what other islands in the region doing when it comes to immigrants. Well, we aren't the same as other islands when it comes to immigrants, and we actually have a possible need for more immigrants over here. All right, So let's see what she's saying made this not be a one-off thing. This incident is far from a one-off accident, as Rowley is pathetically attempting to claim to cover his tracks. In some of these, listen, I've read a few of these press releases. If I have any UNC supporters inside of the chat, and you have the ear of your dear leader, please tell them ease up on the adjectives. After a certain amount, the adjectives don't add anything to the reading. No one is reading this. And when you add pathetic and disgusting and desperately in front of everything to do with Dr. Rowley, that narrative may work for your most ardent of fans, but if you're trying to convince people in between, if you're trying to convince people to your side, it just seems like sycophancy. It seems like you're trying to push a more heated kind of doctrine. Let's ease up on the adjectives, please. All right. Persad Bissessa further knocked Rowley, reminding him of his government's policy in deporting migrant children, that it was his government which shamelessly deported 16 children under a form, including a 4-month-old infant, by placing them on pirogues at Sidras and telling them to make their way across the treacherous waters of the Gulf of Paria to Venezuela. Now, here's the thing I found ironic about that. I found it very, very ironic that people were complaining about sending these children over on these pirogues back to Venezuela when they just came in that same way. Their parents, the people who supposedly care about them the most in the world, found it safe enough, reliable enough to put them on the pirogue and bring them across to here. So putting them on the pirogue and sending them back home seems par for the course. And to be fair, when that happened, the pirogue didn't turn over, the pirogue reached safely, and we safely deported those people. And even though they are children, this argument, I remember seeing this over in the United States, and finally the argument, as some of the politicization is stripping down, finally the argument is being seen for kind of being the nonsense it is. Like, all of a sudden, because it's migrant children, that all of a sudden that means we must take all the migrant children in the world. Listen, I love children too. I understand the innocence of children. I understand the natural human compulsion to help children as much as you can. But you can't help all the children in the world. And even if they are migrant children, so migrant children cannot be deported, I don't understand what is the point there. I don't understand what her point was there. She added, so that was one of her incidents to prove that this wasn't a one-off accident. So one of her incidents that makes her call our Coast Guard officers murderers. Bear in mind, this is the track record she's using to call our Coast Guard murderers, baby killers. This is what she's using to call them that. She added that in 2019, a migrant vessel carrying over 30 persons capsized in the Gulf of Paria, with only 9 survivors being found. This incident, she stated, was never acknowledged by the Rowley regime, and no attempts were made to prevent it from happening again. Listen, whose fault that is? How is this the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago's fault? I am not the fiercest Dr. Rowley defender. If many of you watch a lot of my content, you'll be able to see by now that Dr. Rowley isn't necessarily my favorite person in the world. But this line of criticism is just ridiculous. It makes no sense. It doesn't add up. What was Dr. Rowley supposed to do when there are desperate people in Venezuela? So desperate, they are willing to jump onto pirogues that aren't reliable and try to make their way to Trinidad and Tobago. And unfortunately, some die in the process. Who is supposed to do something about it? And the disgusting part about this, I said this before, but I think it warrants repeating. because she says it's justification to call them murderers, basically, because it shows for some reason that there's a track record of abusing Venezuelans. The disgusting part of all of this is, to most people in Trinidad and Tobago, even to the most fervent of supporters of the United National Congress, they would know she's speaking politics, and they may jump on and agree with her, but they know in their heart that, yeah, this isn't true. We don't have murderous baby killers as Coast Guards, and we know this is politics being played here. To the people who don't support her in Trinidad and Tobago, we would know this is her using her same tactics that have failed for so long, and she's just doing more of the same. But to an international body, to some international papers, to international news organizations, if they're taking a quote from the opposition leader of Trinidad and Tobago, and the nonsense she is spouting is insinuating that there's a track record of our country abusing these Venezuelan migrants, they may not know the nuances of the insanity that comes from the politics here, and they may take that as fact. And that's the image you're putting out of your country, that you say you're loyal to, you're patriotic to, you love this country, and you want to get back to rule this country, and that's how you treat this country. That does not make sense to me. It really does not. This incident, she stated, was never acknowledged. Despite the cozy relationship which exists between Keith Rowley and Nicolas Maduro, no serious attempts have been made by Keith Rowley to hold Venezuelan authorities responsible for preventing illegal border crossings. How that's happening? How is that happening? How are we holding the Venezuelans responsible for illegal border crossings? Donald Trump, who was the president of the United States, which many would consider the most powerful nation in the world, he couldn't get the Mexicans to be responsible for the border crossings down at their southern border. The Mexicans couldn't get their fellow Central American countries to be responsible for the border crossings that allowed migrants to have a passageway through Mexico. And they are larger countries than us. How exactly do you propose that the government of Trinidad and Tobago goes down to Venezuela and convinces Mr. Maduro, who is an authoritarian leader, that he must stop people from crossing the border? And then here's the thing. Here's the caveat on that. She is speaking about humanitarianism. That's what she's talking about, humanitarianism. Listen, if Dr. Rowley were to speak to Nicolas Maduro, and between the two of them, they figure out a way to lock all of the migrants who want to leave Venezuela, to lock them into the borders, into Venezuela. If they figure out a way to do that, that would be considered an international humanitarian crisis, because you would have refugees trying to flee that are being forbidden from fleeing. So even what this woman is recommending makes no sense. Remember, this lady, the lady who lost her son to the Coast Guard, she has already said she's pleading with the authorities to please let her stay. She doesn't want to go back to Venezuela. It's obvious she wanted to escape that place. So would you then say that the better method would be that Dr. Keith Rowley goes and plans and concocts up some kind of scheme with Maduro and figures out a way to lock them in? That would be your better plan, Miss Kamala Prasad-Bissessar. That's the plan you propose, making sure that refugees cannot leave the place that they say they are being tortured and oppressed in? Does that plan really make sense? Let's think it through for a moment. Double think that and then come back again. Sleep on that and then come back. But there are witness statements coming out of the whole thing, and this was something that I was waiting on, to be fair. Some of the witness statements contradict what the Coast Guard report says. Witness statement, Coast Guard fired 20 shots. Now, when we reach that part, we discuss that to see exactly how much sense that makes. The Coast Guard fired about 20 shots at the vessel carrying 37 passengers. Okay. We're following here. 20 shots, this is the witness statement. 20 shots fired at a vessel carrying 37 passengers, including 20 children. This is according to witness statements. Following is the text of the witness statement. Following their departure from Tucupita, Venezuela on the night of the 5th day of February, a boat occupied by 37 passengers, inclusive of 17 adults and 20 children, made its way to Trinidad and Tobago. At departure, their boat had 2 engines, and one of the engines had severe difficulties and kept cutting off. Upon approaching the vicinity of Moruga, Trinidad, in the ocean, the above-mentioned engine cut off once again, and they had difficulties moving in the water. As they were slowly coming along, they heard a loud voice, followed by 2 flares. One flare was shot into the air, and the other flare was fired at their boat. Shortly after they noticed the flare, they heard loud banging noises and realized their boat was being shot at by the approaching vessel, which fired the flares. This is the witness statement. They then realized it was the TT Coast Guard's vessel occupied by approximately 6 officers. All persons attempted to seek cover in the boat after approximately 20 shots were fired at their boat. The witnesses are 3 Venezuelan individuals who were on the boat. Those are the witnesses. Now, somebody tell me this. 20 shots fired at a boat with 37 people rammed into it. And 1 baby was shot with 1 gunshot. I believe he was shot in the head. And I think it was that same 1 shot that damaged the mother. No one else was even as so much grazed. 20 shots. Anybody else? Anybody else find, at no point in time did they have a weapon, nor did they fire any weapon at the Coast Guard. At no point in time did they drop anything into the water. When the larger Coast Guard vessel arrived, they first took the mother of the deceased child off the boat by herself and placed her upon the vessel. Alright, that's basically going into the details of after what happened. Either a Coast Guard rail Ben or... yes, that's the thing. You're expecting me to believe that our Coast Guard are very inaccurate. But they're very inaccurate, but so unluckily inaccurate enough that 1 shot hits close to the target and kills a baby and injures the mother. The people said, and that's the thing, that's an important question right there. Did shots as in bullets, or did they shoot at the mother or in the air? The witnesses said they were shooting at the boat. At the boat. 20 shots, no less, at the boat. 1 person, 1 individual killed. And it seems like 1 shot enters the boat. Told you they made a serious mistake, like they never lie. So, okay, I am glad you are in the chat, Super Freak. I would even encourage you in the after chat to join so we can actually talk about this person to person here. We could actually talk about this. Which one? This is dumbfounding to me. And this seems a lot to me like when I have those conversations where I was criticizing the rental of the property. From our Attorney General, and the buying of those tax-free vehicles from the members of Parliament while taxing us more severely. And some real PNM supporters jumped in there and were bending over backward and making themselves into pretzels to try and defend this. And what this opposition leader has done here has put her supporters in the unenviable position of trying to defend this insanity. And this is what is happening now. So, tell me, anyone that's defending this, which story makes more sense to you? That our Coast Guard saw a vessel because according to them, their engine gave out. The Coast Guard zoomed up upon them, shot at them with a flare, and then riddled their boat with 20 bullets, and only stopped when they heard the mother scream out and when they came close enough. First off, if six Coast Guard officers were attempting to riddle a boat, more than 20 bullets would be shot. But okay, they riddled the boat with 20 bullets. One individual was hit. Does that make more sense to you? Or does it make more sense that a boat with smugglers trying to smuggle humans into a country was speeding in and trying to avoid the Coast Guard, who tried to stop smugglers and then tried to get into a tit for tat with the smaller Coast Guard vessel? The Coast Guard aimed for the engine. They possibly hit that engine. That's why they said that one engine was out. And then the mother, who very likely wanting to be safest in the boat, would have been sitting closest to the engine. Anyone who has ever sat in a pirogue would know that, generally speaking, the safer spot is closer to the engine. So the mother and her baby very likely would have been closer to the engine, and they aimed for the engine, and she was unfortunately shot. Which one makes more sense to you? The Coast Guard did everything that they usually do, everything in their procedural manual, and that's how it played out? Or no, they are actually murderous, and whenever the Coast Guard happens upon immigrant vessels, they riddle it with bullets first? If that was the case, how many instances of deadly force have the Coast Guard been accused of and that have been shown to happen? There are Venezuelans coming in and out, coming in our borders nightly. The Coast Guard regularly has run-ins with them. If the Coast Guard had a tendency of killing Venezuelans, there would be much more of them dead. For example, the Guardia Nacional over in Venezuela, their Coast Guard has a tendency of killing Trinidadian fishermen. That's why there are many more missing Trinidadian fishermen missing when they make the mistake of venturing into Venezuelan waters than there are Venezuelans shot and killed by our Coast Guard. How many? You in the chat, who obviously is supporting this, you in the chat, tell me how many Venezuelans have been killed by our Coast Guard over the last 5 years. How many? If they are so murderous and obviously intent on abusing their powers and killing out the Venezuelan immigrants, that does not make sense. Not mainly Coast Guard, mainly people who use firearms. What are you talking about? We're talking about Coast Guard. Kamla Persad-Bissessar leveled this accusation at the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. She didn't level this accusation at a nebulous gun-carrying law enforcement agency somewhere in the world. She said the Coast Guard murdered this baby. So I am asking you, who seems to support this kind of statement, for even a resemblance of a fact, even a smidgen of evidence to go along with a statement like this. Even a smidgen. Please. Please. I went through here to look at, in a Guardian article, they had the legal rules of engagement. They had the legal rules of engagement placed here for the Coast Guard, and I found it interesting. I'll read it through briefly. Under the rules of engagement, under the subheading use of force, it explicitly states that the use of force shall be used as a last resort and shall be minimum effective force necessary to achieve the mission. The next subheading speaks to self-defense, indicating etc., etc. However, the last heading of the rules of engagement outlines when lethal force can be used, stating service personnel are permitted to use lethal force for the purpose of achieving the mission. Such lethal force shall be in accordance with the preceding clauses and shall be the last resort. So here are the clauses that lethal force shall be in accordance with. The clauses referenced are these. Clause 2 indicates never use more force than the minimum necessary to enable you to carry out your duties. Fine. Clause 3 says always try to handle the situation by other means than opening fire. If you have to fire Fire only aimed shots to stop engines. Do not fire more rounds than are absolutely necessary to achieve your aim. Clause 6 indicates when possible a warning should be given before you open fire, while Clause 7 says a warning should be as loud as possible, preferably by loud hailer. It must give clear orders to stop attacking or to halt as appropriate. Release flares to get the attention of the vessels. State that fire will be opened if the orders are not obeyed. According to this, and according to the report given by the Coast Guard, they seem to have followed this nearly to the letter. Okay, that's the Coast Guard report. Who knows, they could be liars according to Kamala Persad-Bissessar. Critical is clause 13. Now listen to this. You may fire without warning, when hostile firing is taking place in your area and a warning is impracticable, or 2, against a person carrying what you positively identify as a firearm if he is clearly about to use it for offensive purpose, and finally 3. This is the important one. Against a ship or boat that is about to illegally endanger a Coast Guard vessel. Under the Coast Guard rules of engagement and use of force policy, they may fire without warning against a vessel. Wow, I just looked up and lost my eyesight there. Okay, against a ship or a boat that is about to illegally endanger a Coast Guard vessel. I would believe ramming a Coast Guard vessel could be seen as endangering a Coast Guard vessel. So if you attempt to ram a Coast Guard vessel, they are within their use of force policy to shoot. So this nonsense that I've seen numerous people talk about, I saw someone in the comments in the contemplation suggesting that the Coast Guard should have done evasive maneuvers and traced this vessel and tracked them till they came ashore. And then when they came ashore, then chase them down and catch them. I'm like, good thing you are not in charge of any law enforcement. That is nonsense. That is bare, pure, unadulterated rubbish. The Coast Guard was supposed to do evasive maneuvers when they're trying to hit you, allow them to escape, and then go to find them. That is some nonsense. If you're trying to catch the police, if the police are trying to catch you and you seem like you really don't want to be caught, then they need to leave you be. That's what needs to happen. No, that's not what happens. That is nonsense. It is ridiculous. I think Kamala Persad-Bissessar was wrong. I think she put her supporters in a very unfortunate position here. But as I said, one of the disadvantages that UNC is facing right now is they have built up the near cult-like support of their leader within their party. So she is nearly unopposed inside of that party. I saw Vasant Bharat released a statement. I think he may still consider himself to some extent a UNC member, but he formally ran for the leadership of the UNC and failed. But he released a statement criticizing what Kamala Persad-Bissessar said, rightfully so, and criticizing those who are standing by her. And here's the thing. I think she put some of her party faithful into a very awkward position. And I speak real. I'm speaking real here. If we're real, I think a pretty large section of the UNC base aren't enthused about Venezuelans. If you follow many of the UNC pages, I'm actually an on the low member of some UNC pages out there. It's interesting to scroll political pages and see what people say inside of their echo chambers. And they are not fans of the Venezuelans coming here. The UNC weren't fans of the registration process. They weren't fans of allowing them to land here. They weren't fans of allowing any number of them here. They were fans of repatriating them as quick as possible. They were fans of deporting as many of them as possible. That was the general fan base, the general support base inside of the UNC. I am telling you from my own estimation and own reading. But now you are putting some of them in the position where they themselves, when I first released mentioning something about this about what happened there, I saw some people talking about the Coast Guard should have done away with all of them, and I'm like, these people are insane. These people are just saying. I'm glad you said this. Prince Van says, just saying, Earth doesn't belong to anybody. We as humans have no humanity. Peace. Okay, Prince Vans. Where do you live? Drop your address in the chat. The Earth belongs to nobody. Where do you live, sir? Drop your home address in the chat and leave it open for any one of us humans, humanity. Leave it open for any human to come join your home. I find it despicable. I find it really despicable that people are so often willing to offer other people's resources for charity and not their own. It's like some of those politicians who regularly talk about welcoming more immigrants and more refugees, and they live in communities gated off where not one of these immigrants live as their neighbors. It's insane. You are calling for things where you do not face the negative consequences of it. So if the earth has no boundaries and no borders, please, Prince Vans, where have you gone? Where have you gone, Prince Vans? Prince Vans, where have you gone? Please post your home address in the chat so that some one of these humans, limousine liberals and champagne socialists, I am willing to allow anybody to my home once they contribute to the growth. But that's the thing. You don't know if they're going to contribute to the growth. How would you know that? How would you possibly know that? In caps as you are typing, I see you still haven't posted it. In caps as you are typing, Prince Vans, and don't take this as an attack as G. Chris is trying to put it there. I am not attacking. I like even the disagreement in the comments. By all means, disagree in the comments. So, by all means, Prince Vans, we're talking here. In caps as you are posting in all caps there, please post your home address. Maybe someone who's coming is going to be there for growth. Maybe they're not. Who knows? It's a mixed bag. But we are humans. Where is your humanity? Do you lock your doors? Do you have burglar proof on your windows? Do you have locks in your vehicle? Do you have a lock on your gate? Do you have a house wall? I wonder if the Veni pirates go want revenge on our fishermen. They're not afraid of us. Well, the fishermen already have complained about this. Some of the fishermen down south have already said that they have received threats and they are afraid to go out on the waters. Funny enough, let's not go there. But many of the fishermen have expressed that they have received some threats and they are afraid to go out on the waters. Some of the Coast Guard have also said that they have been receiving threats. They have been receiving threats from criminal elements that if they see them, they're going to harm them. A high-ranking Coast Guard official got a direct threat over social media from some high-ranking underworld figure also. So threats are being issued, and I find it ridiculous that in this entire scenario, our opposition and apparently our fellow citizens are on the side of these threat givers to the Coast Guard who are attempting to protect you and protect your borders. These Coast Guard officers are out there in the ocean. You're paying them to be out there in the pitch black ocean in the night to protect you from all the dangers unseen to you. You do not know what's coming in and out every night. You are hoping that they're protecting you as best as they can, and then you're going to be on the side of people trying to breach that protection. Come on, man. Let's make sense, please. All right. If you are on the TikTok live as per usual and you missed any bit of it, feel free to join me over on YouTube. You can go over to YouTube, subscribe to my channel, Nathan Springer on YouTube. Do subscribe over there, and almost all of the nightly lives are posted there. So you can go over there and find the lives from previous times. You can find all other 35 lives and other content too for your enjoyment. Go subscribe to my channel over on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, make sure you click that like button. Drop a comment if you have something to say. If you are looking at this in the follow-up and you reach this far, well, congratulations. Drop a comment, tell me what you think. But that's all I have for now. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. And I'll see you again tomorrow, Friday, which would be my last live for the week. See you again tomorrow at around 9.